So, what do you think? Does Blade Runner 2049 suck?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I don't know about you, but when I hear that a work is getting a sequel after 35 years, I tend to be extremely skeptical. I find myself questioning if the production staff will have enough of the same inspiration to continue, like in the same vein, or if it's just some studio cashing in on easy nostalgia. I think many modern reboots and sequels kind of just end up being very hollow. But for Blade Runner 2049, I'm actually surprised to say that I believe the film was a sincere attempt to continue the original in a way that respected the fan base. I mean, there are parts of the film that are downright gorgeous design wise, and you can really tell that they took the same aesthetic and kind of just dialed it up to 11. However, I also believe that it suffers from a fatal flaw. It is just too damn big to fit into one movie. I mean, there's so many plot elements, locales, characters, factions, and objectives that it ends up feeling very unfocused and pulls me out of the movie altogether. I mean, geez, even the ad women are big. And you know how I just said it dials the aesthetic up to 11? That can also be a bad thing. It kind of really ends up beating a dead horse about how raw and bleak the future is when the entire audience already knows it from the opening. This movie really doesn't need to keep upping the ante to get my attention. I mean, it's kind of similar to that phenomenon of listening to someone complain about someone else and noticing that every time they list another misdeed, you find yourself wondering, are they making this up? Are they embellishing it? And after a while, you just kind of tune them out altogether. Let's remember, this is not a short movie. It's longer than 2.5 hours, barely. And it has numerous slow, brooding scenes, which is expected. I mean, it is Blade Runner, but even with this long runtime, because it has so much content to move through, there just isn't enough time to adequately portion out among the scenes and characters. So let's talk about the actual plot lines the movie introduces. The largest is essentially a case of a missing replicant child, something that really shouldn't have even been possible and is constantly beaten into your head as a miracle that Ryan Gosling needs to track down to protect society, which is clearly already broken, from breaking more. All the while, a businessman, Jared Leto, sends his cronies to follow Ryan so he can learn about the child's conception, so he can have more slaves to populate more worlds faster. There's also Ryan's relationship with his AI partner and how it evolves due to his purchase of a device that makes her more physical. We have Ryan coming to grips with whether or not his memories are real, if he has a soul, and dealing with his eventual classification of needing to be retired. These are pretty standard replicant existential crises. And finally, we have a replicant resistance movement who are advocating for replicant freedom and seem to be on the cusp of a revolution. They also seem to be tracking Ryan so that they can hide the newly found reproductive capabilities that led to the replicant child. And while these sound fine on paper, the problems start to occur when the movie allocates time between them. My biggest issues are that I'm not convinced that the major character motivations really like at all, and I hate the way the replicant resistance movement is handled. So when Robin Wright learns that a replicant reproduced, she states,
The world is built on a wall that separates kind. Tell either side there's no wall, you bought a war or a slaughter.
this becomes a primary driver of the story, but what exactly is society going to collapse to? And why exactly? I mean, the society already looks pretty terrible, and I don't understand why disclosing this reproductive gap is all that is needed to break the camel's back. The replicants already look human, they act human, and I would think being a subject to something that looks just like you, and from what I've heard, the replicants are like stronger and better. This would probably cause a lot of questions within their community to begin with, and they seem to already have a sense of rebellion and are actively organizing and hiding. I mean, how does a single replicant child change the equation that much? And even if replicants can reproduce, which there aren't any indicators that others have and or even can, wouldn't those children just be seen in society as replicants as well? I mean, there's a lot of questions from this, and I need more than this one statement to convince me that this character really thinks this and that this character is correct to think this. Jumping to Jared Leto, he's the main bad guy who is rarely in the film at all, and when he is, he's usually just spouting generic philosophy that is supposed to give us a window into his character in as few sentences as possible. Um, but he could be a lot more than just a generic bad guy. I mean, he's blind. He recently saved the population of Earth. He's a captain of industry. Yet all we get is
to 9 new worlds. 9. A child can count to 9 on fingers. We should own the stars.
Yes, sir.
Every leap of civilization was built off the back of a disposable workforce. We lost our stomach for slaves, unless engineered. But I can only make so many.
okay. So he wants reproducing slaves because society can apparently only be built off of disposable workforces, even with massive technological leaps. And he can't make enough of these slaves. But what are his real tangible targets and goals? I mean, he says he wants humanity to control the stars, but it just seems kind of arbitrary and ill-defined. Hey, and there's more of that dialing it up to 11 for you. I mean, look how kooky he is. He killed her and then he kisses her. Luckily, he's the only person who does this weird kind of stuff. Oh, shit. Okay. Part of me just wishes that love story with the AI could just be taken out and more of this guy could be put in. I mean, it's not like I need his whole backstory about how he stubbed his toe when he was 6, but it's just really hard for me to care about a bad guy or what he wants when his development is so streamlined. I mean, this character just feels so unimportant. Speaking of streamlined, the entire replicant resistance movement seems to just appear out of thin air in the last third of the movie to wrap up the whole case with a tight bow. And then they talk about a coming revolution, something that sounds more interesting than what I've been watching. And then they vanish completely. They don't continue to help Ryan or Harrison. And once again, we have a character, this lady with the one eye, who I'm pretty sure is only in 2 scenes in the entire movie. She could have been an interesting character. But instead, no. We're given 20 minutes of staring at a giant tit or listening to some guy talk about a miracle over and over. I mean, I really don't understand why this group is in the movie at all. They just derail my focus and make me wish I was watching their movie. Oh yeah, and one of this group's primary drivers is to stop Jared from getting the reproductive capabilities as well. But once again, why exactly? I would assume to stop him from being able to build a force to fight them. And I guess obviously, they don't want more slaves. But then why did they leave Harrison alive and not very well protected? Or were they even working with him? I really just wish I had more time with this faction.
Because you've never seen a miracle.
I showed him how to scramble the records.
Dressed her in blue when it was time for her to go.
Because you've never seen a miracle.
I showed him how to scramble the records. Cover their tracks.
With my own eyes, I saw her come. I dressed her in blue when it was time for her to go.
Because you've never seen a miracle.
Oh my god.